this term. Okay, so most of it. This is a defining idea for most U.S. citizens, and according to James Teslo Adams, a writer who greatly contributed to American literature, life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to ability or achievement, regardless of social class or circumstances of birth. Now, according to the Pew Research Center, in 1999, 75% of Americans still believed in the American dream. But as of August of this year, only 60% of Americans still believe. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cassandra Rivera. And like most of you, I'm an American taxpayer. Now, I've always had an interest in government and politics, and I've done a lot of research on this topic, and I've also taken various government classes. I'm here today to propose a policy that every U.S. citizen should pay the same tax rate. The American dream is becoming just that, a dream. A faint memory of what could have been, but probably never will be. Without that dream, what hope do we have? Today I'm here to talk to you about how the current tax system has caused so many problems for us, what the causes of that problem are, and lastly, I'll share with you one possible solution and what all of you can do to get us there. In its current state, our tax system is at best inconsistent, unfair, and confusing. An example of inconsistency comes from the Tax Policy Center, which states that overall federal taxes are progressive. That means that the effective rate goes up with your income. However, payroll taxes, which if any of you have a paycheck, the little numbers with the minus signs next to them, those tax rates are regressive, which means that they go down as your income goes up. That just really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So our tax system is a pretty big mess. And it's just flat out confusing because it's always changing. These factors put our entire country and everything that we stand for at risk. Too high of taxes on any single group is counterproductive to our economy. It means less money in Americans' pockets to spend on American products and fuel American businesses. That means that these businesses could be forced to close, meaning less jobs for Americans and in turn less money to fuel our economy. This isn't just our parents' problem anymore. Most of us are entering the work world and are having to pay taxes now. And with our current economical state, it's becoming a problem that affects everybody, even people, children that aren't working. The middle class is beginning to die. Now that I've talked about the problem itself, let's look at its causes. There are two main causes for this problem. The first is the federal government's irresponsible spending. The second is that government officials negligently manipulate tax rates in order to push political agendas. According to the Journal of Post-Keynesian Economics, the U.S. has been in debt since it was founded. The Revolutionary War left our country with a debt of $75 million right off the bat. And since then, we've only had the deficit under control a handful of times. There are also large amounts of money being poured into public programs like welfare, Medicare, and Social Security. These programs are necessary in order to maintain a civilized nation, but are largely abused. I can't even tell you how many times I've been at the grocery store standing behind a woman wearing $300 jeans, carrying probably a $500 handbag, and paying for her food with food stamps. And back to how government officials manipulate tax rates, this not only leads to confusion for all Americans, but it leads to resentment towards different social classes amongst our society. To put this in better perspective for all of you, I'm going to use GPAs as an example. So imagine that you've worked really, really hard and you've earned a 4.0 GPA. Now you have a friend, and all that friend does is go out and party, they don't study, they don't do their homework, and consequently they only have about a 1.5. Now the university decided that it wants more support from people with lower GPAs, so they tell you that they're going to take some of your GPA to average out the lower ones. Now that doesn't seem very fair, does it? No. Okay, but on the other hand, let's look at it from another perspective. Let's say you're taking really, really hard classes and you're working really hard, but you can't seem to keep your GPA above a 2.0. Now your friend, the one that parties, is only taking a couple classes, but for some reason they have a 4.0. Now that idea doesn't seem so unfair, does it? So this gives you a better idea of how the social classes kind of feel towards each other as tax rates are manipulated. Now that we understand the problem and its major causes, let's move on to a solution. In order to see progress on this issue, there are a lot of steps that our country needs to take. First, we need to learn from our past and stop repeating our bad spending habits. George Santayana, who contributed largely to American philosophy, once said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." So, a more consistent tax plan, including a flat income tax rate, needs to be created. That rate should apply to all personal income, minus the basic cost of living, of course. That means personal income gained through dividends and capital gains are subject to the same rate. This will eliminate a lot of the resentment among the classes and bring back a sense of American pride. Second, we need to eliminate all loopholes and tax breaks, with the exception of some corporate tax breaks and tax breaks for small businesses. According to an article published in the Washington Post, there has been economic research to prove that the corporate income tax actually discourages domestic investment, which is definitely not what our economy needs right now. Lastly, we need to get a handle on the abuse of public programs. This should be done by a reevaluation of the conditions that determine eligibility to receive aid. There should also be a requirement that one must show proof of legal residence in this country to receive aid paid for by U.S. taxpayers. Now, a lot of this solution requires action in the higher levels of government, and that won't happen overnight. But every law, bill, or policy that's ever been passed had to start somewhere, and there are ways that you can make a difference. First is to educate yourself. Make sure you know where your tax dollars are going and how our tax system affects you, and share this information with your family and friends. As of right now, the United States is still a democracy, and all of you still have a voice. It is extremely important that you make that voice heard. You can do this by voting in local, state, and national elections. So in conclusion, today I've told you a little bit about the U.S. tax system, and now we are more aware of why it's a problem, what has caused this problem, and a reasonable solution to the problem. Our country is quickly losing faith in the beliefs that it was founded upon. The American dream is more than just the idea of upward social mobility through hard work. It represents hope. We are all going through a pretty rough time as a country right now, but we can't act on our fear. We must act on our hope. Thank you.